I had an eating disorder from when I was about 8 years old. I dealt with binge eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, and bulimia nervosa. I did have a genetic predisposition towards eating disorders, and this is tricky too because it can also be learned behaviorally. So if you have a family member that has an eating disorder, you can also just pick up on the behaviors of the eating disorder and think that it's normal. My mom had an eating disorder, and she actually got it from her mom. Her mom had an eating disorder. She had binge eating disorder, and I can remember seeing her eating a large amount of food in response to emotional stressors. So from when I was a really little kid, I thought that this was actually just a normal, healthy way to deal with emotional stress. I thought, well, my mom deals with stress this way, so this is how you're meant to deal with stress. So I would mimic what she was doing. I would eat a lot of food in response to emotional stress because that's what I saw my mom doing. So I thought that this was a normal, healthy way of dealing with emotions. This was a means that I developed of coping when I didn't know better ways of coping. I can also remember seeing my mom staring into the mirror, body checking, and out loud saying derogatory things to herself about her body in the mirror. So this kind of implanted into my mind that it's okay to talk badly about yourself and put yourself down, and that somehow value is tied in with your body. I can remember just looking into the mirror and one of my protector parts inside my head just saying derogatory things to me inside my head while I looked at my body in the mirror. This very much mirrored what I would see my mom do. So I think that is one way that these behaviors can be passed on to family members, especially because kids are impressionable. And my parents both had very unhealthy views around food and eating. I remember my dad would critique my mom and her eating habits and her body. This is very abusive, but this behavior was unfortunately normalized in my household. My dad would say a lot of derogatory comments towards my mom and towards other people in general about their weight and how their body looked. So this caused me to internalize a lot of these values as a little kid before I really knew any better. This sent me the message that this is how you should regard food and eating, and that it's okay to be basically abusive towards yourself. So I internalized my parents' unhealthy views towards food and eating. So I first remember really starting to struggle with the eating disorder when I was 8 years old, with my malevolent protector part inside my head putting me down and prompting me to do and perpetuate these unhealthy eating disorder behaviors. I think this was also a coping mechanism because there was a sense of food scarcity. My parents grew up poor in England, and so they had been taught that you have to finish all of the food on your plate, that it's not okay to leave food. And this sentiment was sort of passed down to me. This can lead to disordered eating because it causes you to start to ignore your hunger fullness signals. If there's a rule that you have to finish all of the food on your plate, this can cause you to eat even when you don't feel hungry anymore. because you feel like that's just the right thing to do and that you have to. It seemed like as the years went by and I dealt with more stress and trauma, the worse the eating disorder got, because I needed a way to cope with what I was going through. I see now that this was self-protective. My protector part was trying to help protect me by perpetuating this coping mechanism. Even though it was unhealthy, we had a lot of stress and trauma that we needed to deal with somehow. And because we'd never gotten therapy at this point, we didn't know any better way to deal with it, so my protector part started really pushing the eating disorder. So like I said, it started off with me overeating with binge eating disorder. Then it switched into me restricting food, and I developed anorexia nervosa. I lost a lot of weight, and I remember some comments from teachers and adults in my life, but nobody ever really realized what a problem it was for me or that I needed help. Looking back now, I really wished that an adult had realized what was going on with me and gotten me help earlier. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, so I just had to deal with it on my own. I had an eating disorder for basically my entire life, and I'm recovered now, and I've been recovered for about the past 5 years. When I had my eating disorder in the past, I truly thought that recovery was not possible. I didn't really have a lot of role models of people who had recovered from eating disorders. I just want to share my story to let other people know that recovery is actually possible.